chapter 3 of 1 Corinthians, we have seen how the Apostle Paul began his rebuke of the Corinthian believers. They'd become just like the culture around them. They'd fallen prey to the cultural tendency to elevate humans to godlike status. They didn't just do this with secular leaders, but we saw in the previous video that they even did this with the leaders in the church. Some of them even elevated Paul to this sort of status, and so Paul has just reminded them, like he, along with Apollos and the others, are nothing more than servants of Jesus Christ. God is the one who does the heavy lifting in gospel ministry. All power of spiritual transformation is found in God and in Him alone. But now in verses 10 to 17 of chapter 3, Paul wants to assure the Corinthians what that doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that our gospel work as Christians doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that, since the results are up to God, it doesn't matter how I serve. No. Paul says our methods absolutely matter, and perhaps even more poignant, our motivations matter as well. Look what Paul says in verses 10 through to 17. According to the grace of God given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation and someone else is building upon it. Let each one take care of how he builds upon it. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now if anyone builds on a foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become manifest, for the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only as through fire. Do you not know that you are God's temple, and that God's Spirit dwells in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him, for God's temple is holy, and you are that temple. Paul says one day all our gospel work will be exposed before the Lord. And God isn't just going to look at the results of your gospel work. Remember, He's the one who's ultimately in charge of the results. God's also going to look at our methods and our motivations. In other words, to use the analogy that Paul uses here, God isn't just concerned about the building that we present to Him, but He's also interested in the materials that we used for the building. Isn't that in some ways a scary thought? You see, God's evaluation of you isn't just going to be based upon how many years did you serve as youth leader. God isn't going to evaluate you merely based on how many people did you bring to church. God isn't going to ultimately evaluate you merely based on how many years did you serve in the youth church band. God isn't just going to evaluate you based on the number of times you shared the gospel. No, your evaluation isn't just based on what you did, but how and why you did it. You see, you could serve as a church youth leader for 20 years. That looks great. But maybe you served for those 20 years secretly with the prideful enjoyment of being the person in charge. That's like building with hay, Paul says. It's going to get burned up. You could sing in the church band for years and have the most beautiful voice. But perhaps you did it because you loved the adulation that you got of performing in front of people. Paul says that's like building with straw. It'll get burned up. You could bring 30 different people to church over your lifetime and 20 of them could become Christians. That looks great. Yet perhaps you did that with a heart full of pride. And so Paul says it's like building with straw. It's going to get burned up and exposed. Here's your challenge. With God's help, examine your motives. Why is it that you do what you do? Even the good things that you do, why do you do them? Your service of the Lord, what are your deep-lying motivations? And as you do that, and perhaps you unfold some poor motivations, don't use it as an excuse to step away from ministry service. Rather, use it as an opportunity and as a means of going back to the gospel, thrilling your heart with who God is and what He's done for you, and allow that to fuel your future service of God with a heart full of gratitude and thanks, giving God all of the glory. Hope you have a good day.